This is the Louie Tee Network.
All right, welcome to Lockdown Coverage. I'm your man, Louie Tee. Thank you for joining me on this program. Really good weekend thus far of NFL action as we get underway. The 2016 NFL season officially Thursday Night Football, of course. Denver Broncos, Carolina Panthers really got this season off to an exhilarating start. This game was no disappointment. Jacksonville Jaguars at home hosting the Green Bay Packers. Of course, I am your man, Louie Tee. For those of you who don't know, thank you for joining me on Lockdown Coverage, wall-to-wall coverage of the National Football League here on the Louie Tee Network. Each and every single contest, all 256 regular season games, and every postseason game will be broken down here in the Lab Room on Louie Tee Network. Now, if this is your first time on this channel, welcome. Subscribe to the channel Louie Tee Network for more great content. Also follow me on Twitter. @In the Lab Room is the Twitter handle. Also, there's Facebook. In the Lab Room is the Facebook page. Give me a like there as well. So let's jump right into this football game. Packers on the road taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars in a very hot contest. It's over 100 degrees out on the field. So very humid out in Jacksonville, but this was a very good football game, and there was a lot of heat and action out on the field. And let's jump into likes, dislikes, banana in the tailpipe in this football game for both teams. We'll start with the visiting team, the Green Bay Packers. And we'll start in the first half. The things that I like from this Packers team, I like the forced turnover on the first possession of the game. They capitalized on that turnover. You get an interception by linebacker Joe Thomas off of a funky carom. You got the receiver touching the ball, you got a defender touching the ball, and then all of a sudden Joe Thomas pops into the screen, takes the football, and runs the other way with it. And the Packers ultimately get in the end zone off of that turnover. So you get out to an early 7-0 lead off the strength of that turnover forced by this Packers defense. Clay Matthews looked spry early in this ball game, especially in the first half. Thought he was blowing some stuff up. They were blitzing him. He was coming off the edge, getting in the backfield, making a difference, like what I saw out of Clay Matthews in the first half. Jordy Nelson, it was just good to see Jordy back out on the football field. I can't say enough about his presence and what he does for this offensive football team. And so just him being on the field, he didn't have a huge impact in this game. Did catch a touchdown, though. But it wasn't one of those, 4 catches, 127 yards, and 2 of them were 2 deep bombs. You haven't seen that yet. It was just good to see Jordy Nelson back on an NFL field. And I think his presence as this season progresses is going to be huge for this Packers offense. And then, of course, you got to love what Aaron Rodgers did. A-Rod, all I wrote down in my notes was, wow. There's a play right before the end of the first half where he's getting blitzed, and Jalen Ramsey, the rookie cornerback for the Jacksonville Jaguars, is sent on a blitz. He gets home. He has Aaron Rodgers in his grasp, and somehow, some way, Aaron Rodgers still has not only the strength but the balls, because Aaron Rodgers usually doesn't take a lot of risk when it comes to potentially turning the football over, but he's got a defender draped all over him, pulling him backwards, yet he launches it. How does he have the arm strength to even get it there? You got me. I don't know. And he finds a way to get to the about 2-yard line to a diving, or actually into the end zone to a diving Devontae Adams, who catches a football, gets the touchdown. Just a phenomenal play by Aaron Rodgers. Again, just all you can say is wow when you see something like that. And that's why, to me, he's the best quarterback in the entire National Football League. You go to the first half likes for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Special teams downed a punt inside the 5-yard line. The defense then subsequently got a 3-and-out, which got the Jaguars some great field position, and they turned that into a touchdown that tied the game up at 7. I thought that was one of the early turning points in this game. We don't talk a lot about special teams, but it makes a huge difference, and I thought that play and then the 3-and-out that the defense was able to force, that in conjunction with them getting in the end zone turned this game around. And it really, because it could have gotten out of control. You're down 7. You're saying, here we go again. And you're not having a lot of success offensively early in this ball game. Then special teams turns the tide. The defense feeds off of that. Then you get the football back offensively, go get points. I thought that was huge for this Jaguars football team. Nortman was great. Speaking of punting down the ball, he had 2 nice punts, both downed inside the 5-yard line in the first half. I thought Brad Nortman, a guy you got over from Carolina, huge acquisition in this offseason to get a guy coming in here. Remember, you spent a 3rd-round pick on Brian Anger, and it just didn't work out. This guy may come in and really help you. There were some huge kicks made by Brad Nortman in this football game, especially in the first half. Gutsy 4th and 5 call by Gus Bradley and his crew, and they actually picked it up. And I think every one of their 4th down conversions, if I'm not mistaken, was picked up by AR-15, Allen Robinson, and he was able to come down with the football, pick up the first down, led to a field goal. Again, when you're the Jacksonville Jaguars and you're playing up against a juggernaut like the Green Bay Packers, sometimes you got to roll the dice, man. And again, scared money don't make money. They went for it on 4th down, ended up resulting in a field goal. So good for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I actually thought they were great on 4th downs. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in this breakdown. Julius Thomas looked good. Juice looked phenomenal in this game. And again, that's what you want to see out of him. You spent a lot of money on him last offseason. Didn't work out last year because of the injuries. But he's a difference maker. You saw that in this game. You're going to see more of that as the season progresses. If he's able to stay healthy, Julius Thomas is a weapon out there for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Great catch in the end zone to give the Jaguars a brief temporary lead as they look to head into halftime with the lead. Ultimately, I talked about that Aaron Rodgers throw to Davante Adams to end the half, basically snatching that lead away. But Julius Thomas was huge, made some really big grabs. He looked good in that first half particularly. And Blake Bortles, I thought after the interception, he looked sharp in that first half, made some good plays. I'd like to see him make some quicker decisions. When it's not there, tuck it and run. You're an athlete, you can run. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but thought he looked good in the first half as well. Let's get to the dislikes for the first half. And for the Packers, the only thing that I didn't like was the early offensive rhythm, or the lack thereof. I thought they were out of sync, out of sorts early on. They couldn't get things going. If not for the interception by Joe Thomas setting them up in great field position, I don't know if they score any points in that first quarter. And they really struggled half of the second quarter as well. They just didn't have that flow. And usually you see Aaron Rodgers, he's in sync with his receivers. That back shoulder fade is money. Jordy Nelson struggled with that. I think Cobb struggled with that a little bit. The timing, and they weren't in the best of positions offensively. Give credit to Jacksonville and their special teams unit for downing the football inside the 5 and backing them up. But make no mistake about it, they were off rhythm-wise, were the Green Bay Packers. They later on cleaned that up, but they struggled early in this football game. I'd like to say most of the first, half of the second, they struggled with offensive rhythm in this football game. You go to the Jaguars, and the things that I did not like in the first half, the early interception by Blake Bortles, of course, you don't want to see that. Remember, Blake Bortles led the league in interceptions tossed a season ago. So you just don't want to see the turnovers, especially early on in ball games. That's how you fall behind. And for a young Jacksonville Jaguars team, that's the last thing you want to do is fall behind in the football game. Jonathan Cyprien, I thought, was a little suspect in the first half. Missed the tackle on Eddie Lacy on a dump off that if he makes that tackle, it's a 2-yard loss, puts the Packers in 3rd and long. Instead, he misses the tackle. Eddie Lacy bounces off of him, rumbles for about 17, 18 yards, maybe even 20, 25 yards inside the Packer 20 or the Jaguar 20-yard line, ultimately led to a Jordy Nelson touchdown. So those are the type of plays you can't have. You need to be able to get guys on the ground. Then he also had a pass interference penalty late in the first half, which ultimately led to the Aaron Rodgers wow play when he threw the touchdown to Davante Adams. He was grabbing all over Jared Cook Jr. down the field about 30 yards, and they threw the flag pass interference. So I thought he had a rough first half, did Jonathan Cyprien. And then the last thing that I didn't like was or that was the last thing that I didn't like in the first half for the Jacksonville Jaguars. As we move to the second half of this ball game, and I'll get to the likes, and we'll go back to the Packers and the things that I liked. A sustaining offense. I thought the Packers dominated time of possession in the second half, primarily that third quarter. The Jaguars, I thought, were starting to get into an offensive rhythm. You saw that at the end of the first half, where they didn't have the ball a bunch in that second half, and give credit to the Packers offense for staying on the field. It didn't always result in a touchdown, but they still were able to control the clock, control the pace and tempo, and really dictate to the Jaguars what was going to happen and be the outcome of this football game for a large part of the second half. Eddie Lacy was a huge part of the reason why he ran the football effectively. It wasn't gaudy. He didn't have some huge eye-popping numbers or anything that was going to really catch your attention in this game. But I talked about the pass he caught earlier. I thought he ran the football hard and effectively, broke tackles. I thought he looked good in this game. You know, a lot was made in the offseason about him needing to lose weight. Thought he looked good in this game. And Clinton Dix hit on AR-15 late in the ball game. Jags looking to win the game, down 4, need a touchdown. Clinton Dix hits Allen Robinson as he's going to make a catch for right around about 35 yards down to about the 6 or 7 yard line of the Packers. He dislodges the football, incomplete. The Jags later on would stall out on this possession, and the Packers would win the football game. So thought Clinton Dix, a couple plays later, would have an interception that was nullified by pass interference or a holding penalty on Morgan Burnett. But Clinton Dix had another strong game. Really like what he was doing as well. Those were my likes for the Packers in the first half or second half of this game. Go to the Jags in the second half. Thought Prince Amukamara, one of your offseason acquisitions, looked good in this game. His debut as a Jacksonville Jaguar, I thought, went off very well. Did have a penalty, did get beat on a couple of plays, but nothing major. I thought he played well, tackled well, covered well. Thought he had a good game and a good showing in his first as a Jaguar. Forcing a field goal inside the 5 yard line after a 16-play drive by the Packers, to me, was instrumental in giving the Jaguars a chance to even have a chance to win this game. Huge stop by the defense. Aaron Rodgers was upset because he audibled to the offense. It was a pass play. He changed it to a run because of the box and the look he got. The offensive line didn't get the call. They stayed in their pass set, which allowed the Jaguars to get up the field and get to James Starks and force the field goal. Either way, I don't care. Jaguars get the stop, forced the field goal, gave themselves a chance at 27-20. If the Packers score a touchdown there, most likely this game is over. They were able to hold their ground and give themselves a chance. Telvin Smith was flying all around the field, a couple of tackles for loss in this game. He was all over Eddie Lacy, thought he had a strong showing. Good to see Telvin Smith flying around the football field. It's that kind of speed and youth that is going to help this Jaguars team on the defensive side of the football. And then hanging tough. I know there are no moral victories in this league. You need to find a way to get it done. And that was the problem with this Jacksonville Jaguars team last year. They played the Pittsburgh Steelers tough. I want to say it was 2 years ago, maybe even last year. They played the Carolina Panthers tough last season. They played a lot of teams tough last season, but the problem was they didn't find ways to win. You saw it again here, but this was a measuring stick game. They came close to winning, but close, it doesn't count. Almost doesn't count, as a wise woman once told me. And if Gus Bradley looks up at the end of the season and this team is 5-11 and they had a bunch of close losses, nobody's going to care. He's probably going to get fired. They have to find a way to win some of these games. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but give them some credit for hanging tough. There are some opportunities for this game to slip away and get out of hand, and they didn't allow that to happen, especially that stop on that 16-play drive to force the field goal. The Packers get in the end zone there. We're not talking about this game being close and the Jacksonville Jaguars having a chance at the end, so give them some credit for hanging tough. And my final like for the Jacksonville Jaguars in this game, especially in the second half, fourth down conversions. Okay, Gus Bradley rolled the dice in this game on numerous occasions. They went for it on fourth down 5 times. They converted 3 times, the last of which they weren't able to convert. So they were 3 or 4 on fourth down. The other time they went for it, they got a pass interference penalty or a holding penalty on Morgan Burnett to extend that drive. So they were really 4 of 5 on fourth downs in this football game. So give some credit to the Jacksonville Jaguars for that kind of efficiency when it matters most on fourth down. Let's get to the dislikes in this game. With the Green Bay Packers in the second half, not capping off lengthy drive with a touchdown, leaving the door open for the Jags. Again, can't have that happen if you're the Packers. You're supposed to close teams like this out. And I know it was a tougher environment on the road, first game of the season, things happen. But if you're the Packers, you're supposed to close the Jags out there on that lengthy drive, put a nail in their coffin, put them to sleep, put them to bed, use any metaphor you like. They were supposed to put them down. Any saying, any idiom fits there. They didn't. They left the door slightly ajar, gave the Jaguars life and a chance to win this game or at least tie it up. And so if you're the Packers, got to be disappointed that you didn't get in the end zone after a 16-play drive, having your drive stall out at the 3-yard line. Having a delay of game penalty after calling a timeout late in the ball game, took a 3rd and 4 and turned it into a 3rd and 9 that ultimately they couldn't convert on. If they convert on that 3rd and 4, game's probably over because the Jaguars had no more timeouts. We'll talk about that in a second. But you go and call a timeout. You come off the timeout and you get a delay of game penalty that is so unpacker-like. Can't happen, especially on the road in a tight ball game. They ultimately ended up in 3rd and 9, didn't convert, gave the Jaguars back the football, down 4 with a chance to win the football game. That's uncharacteristic of this Packers football team. Didn't expect that, but that's what happened. That shouldn't happen. Don't expect it to happen much more, but still, that was something that was troubling if you're a Packers fan watching this game. And the last thing that I didn't like for the Packers, Morgan Burnett on the penalty, the holding penalty on 4th down. If you get that stop, the game is over. Instead, you extend the football game on 4th and 14. You got to be smarter there if you're Morgan Burnett. Cannot commit a 5-yard holding penalty that gives up a 1st down on 4th and 14 with the game on the line. Let's get to the Jaguars in the second half and the things that I didn't like. The inability to get the Packers offense off the field in the second half, especially that 3rd quarter and even into the 4th quarter. I thought they struggled just getting stops on 3rd down and getting the offense back on the field, who we saw building momentum in the end of the first half. They never really got to capitalize off of that because they didn't have the football that many times. If you go back and watch that second half, the Jaguars offensively didn't touch the football a bunch. And yeah, they could have done more with the opportunities that they did get offensively, but they didn't get enough because this defense was not able to get stops, especially on 3rd downs, get the Packers off the field and get the football back to their offense. I did not like that. Wasting all 3 of your timeouts by the 7-minute mark of the 4th quarter. I told you, I don't give a damn what you do with your first half timeouts. You cannot, I repeat, not waste your second half timeouts. The Jaguars had some poor clock management and even had another delay of game penalty later on in the game after they used their final timeout. So they just struggle with clock management, getting in and out of the huddle, getting the play called in on time so that you can make adjustments at the line of scrimmage. They struggle with that all game long, wasting all 3 of their timeouts. And in a perfect world, you got all 3 of your timeouts. And even at the end of this game, when you don't convert on 4th down, you got all 3 of your timeouts. You can find a way to get the football back by using your timeouts. Instead, you have no timeouts left. The ball game, in effect, is over. If you can't convert on 4th down, the Jaguars ultimately could not. Tempo and penalties. Just talked about them having some penalties in this game on the offensive side. The tempo was not what you would like from the Jaguars. I thought they allowed the Packers to dictate pace and tempo, staying on the field. I just think that they didn't give. If you're the Jaguars, you want to play an up-tempo game. You're the younger team. You're the more athletic team. You want to run around. You want to make plays. I didn't think they gave themselves a chance in this football game with the penalties and with the lack of tempo, allowing the Packers to literally grind them out in the second half. And the inability and just unable to win this football game, the inability to win a close ball game against a good football team is my last dislike for this Jaguars team. At some point, you just got to say, all right, enough with the moral victories. We got to start winning some of these games. It's not good enough to come close to beating the Packers. It's not good enough to come close to beating the Panthers. It's not good enough to come close to beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. At some point, you got to say, we got to start winning these games. If you're going to turn the corner, you got to start seeing results, and you got to start finding ways to win these types of ball games. It's not good enough to just be close. In order to learn how to win, you got to actually win. And so the Jaguars haven't figured that out yet. And to lose another game like this at home against a quality opponent, that stings. If you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you got to find a way to win football games like this. They weren't able to do so. Jaguars lose to the Packers 27-23. Don't really have a lot of time to read all of your comments, but I will try to take a look at some of them. if I can, via Twitter, and also try to look at some of them via the discussion chat room box. But like I said, a lot is going on. So I'll take a look at Twitter quickly, and then we'll move on to some of your comments, and then we'll move on to the next breakdown. All right, let's see if we got anything. All right, so nothing yet on Twitter. Let's jump into the discussion room and see if you guys had anything to say. Louie the Great says, how would you rate the quality of the Jaguars' new team? They look good. I thought they did some good things on the offensive side of football, did some good things on the defensive side of football. They didn't allow the Packers to run up the score and score a bunch of points and beat them in a race in terms of just scoring. They didn't turn this thing into a track meet, 37 points. They kept them at arm's reach, did the Packers, but give some credit to the Jaguars for keeping this game manageable so that they could have a chance at the end. But again, like I just mentioned, it's not good enough to come close. If you're a Jaguars fan, you shouldn't be happy with this loss. At some point, you got to start winning these games. But it was good to see them find a way to keep this game close enough so that they had a fighter chance and a puncher's chance at the end of this game to win. But if you're the Jaguars, you need to find a way to find a victory here. Can't come away with a loss in these games all the time. That's how you end up 5-11 at the end of the season. All right. Andrew Kim says, how were Miles Jack and Jalen Ramsey? Also, Kenny Clark, haven't heard much from him. I don't even know if Kenny Clark played. I don't want to lie to you. I know he didn't do much in the preseason, and I think he was dealing with some injuries. But I did see Jalen Ramsey quite a bit. He looked good. He did some good things. They blitzed him. They did all of the things you would expect them to do with Jalen Ramsey. Had a good game. As far as Miles Jack is concerned, didn't hear his name mentioned much. I'm not going to lie to you. I wasn't looking for Miles Jack. He didn't make any plays because his name wasn't mentioned on the telecast. So doesn't mean he didn't play well. Just means I didn't see him and I wasn't out searching for him either. But Jalen Ramsey, his presence was felt in this game. He looks good. He's making plays. He's going to be a handful for opposing offenses to have to deal with because they blitz him. They move him around. They do things with him. They're not just keeping him stationary at the cornerback position. So that's good to know. All right, so that's going to do it for the Jags and the Packers. I thank you guys for joining me here on Lockdown Coverage. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab room. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and everything in the National Football League. I got more breakdowns to come, including Eagles and Browns coming at you next. So I'll be right back to break down the next game that I had a chance to watch. This is the Louie Tee Network and Lockdown Coverage. We're changing the game one live feed at a time. I'll see you in a little bit. Lockdown Coverage coming straight at you.